this one where it says contracts class, these are just like a ton of different notes that I had Allison, my assistant, put together on things that are just, I thought, helpful. You know, like I get a lot of questions sometimes like, how do I do, or how do I write an escalation clause? Mm-hmm. So that's on there, basically, how you were to do that. My offer summary, the offer summary on the page 2 is, I do this for every buyer and seller. When I'm sending out an email with either an offer, like on the offer message, or if I'm sending an offer to a seller, I'm basically doing bullet points on the main things. First of all, because we used to sit down with the client, you know, and go over everything. Now with DocuSign, we don't do it. So it's really important to protect yourself, that you have something, and you always, again, blind CC yourself, put it in the file, so that you can say, well, remember I told you deposit was going to be $24,000. I told you close of escrow was going to be here. I told you that the contingencies were going to be, 14 days or 17 days. So anything that's important, or that the washer, dryer, and the refrigerator was staying, if you're representing a seller, and if they check refrigerator, make sure there's not more than one refrigerator, because if there's a refrigerator in the garage, that's saying 2, unless the buyer doesn't want it. So these are all things, again, that can kind of make you lose sleep if you haven't.
On the escalation clause, do you write that as a separate addendum?
No.
Is that actually on the RPR?
No.
No.
But you write it in additional terms.
Additional terms, thank
yes.
you.
And the way it is written is, there's more than one way of writing this. Basically, the way it is here is purchase price to be, and you would put in, let's say, $10,000 more than the highest offer. You want to, if you're going to do an escalation clause, it needs to be a dollar amount that's going to mean something to the seller. If it's a $500,000 condo, then maybe $5,000 is going to be.
Can you put a cap on that though? Can you say up to?
Yeah.
And then?
No.
Okay.
You're saying how much.
Okay.
But you said not to exceed.
Because it's the highest offer, not to exceed. So
Yeah,
you can put
exceed.
a cap on the
Total amount.
Yeah.
total amount.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. And it says it right in here. However, realistically, you don't have to, because if they say, hey, by the way, we got an offer and it's, $70,000 above, and you're saying, above list price, and you're saying you'll do $10,000 above that, and there's chairs here, then, you want to sit here? Good to see you. Then if you want it, and you can, feel free to use this too.
You're saying the advantage of not doing the to exceed, or the cap, as you're calling the advantage of not doing that, is to not give away what you will pay up to?
Well,
what's the benefit of doing your?
Well, the thing is that in saying not to exceed, then you're telling them, like, you don't want to waste their time. If you got an offer that's $70,000 above, we're not going there. However, if you don't put that in there, they're going to come back to you and say, okay, we have an offer. It's $70,000 above, so basically you are agreeing to pay $80,000 above. Now at that time, then you could say, oh, well, we didn't expect that. We're not going to do that. We're withdrawing. I mean, you haven't put any money in. So I personally wouldn't put a cap on it. Let your client
chance to come back to
exactly
you with something versus, oh no, they're not in the running.
So
we'll go look at these
what-
other people.
exactly.
So
You
you-
do that phone call.
So you're saying the sales price not to exceed a dollar amount, you don't put that in?
I probably wouldn't.
Okay.
Again, this is based on what a lot of people will do, but again, you don't have to. The other thing you don't have to do is say, seller to provide proof of highest bona fide offer. The reason you don't have to do that is that, and a lot of times they will do that, but I generally don't do it, because if it's a multiple offer situation where you really want to get the property, I will keep it out because I want to just seem as easy as I can, them to come back and say, oh, we're accepting your offer. By the way, it's 10,000 over, so you got to go, whatever. And then I'll say, okay, awesome. My client would like to see a copy of that. That's like part of the due diligence,
And you can ask for that and that's fine.
Absolutely. It's just like asking any kind of disclosure thing, My client would like to see, the warranty for the windows, or, they want to know more about this or that. So you can offer, your client hasn't put in a deposit yet, and as we all know, your client, even if they put the deposit in, they can withdraw. So, and you're not asking to see the buyer's name or the agent's name, but, they can black stuff off. But anyway, so that's, and also sometimes when you're using the escalation clause, you might want to ask the agent, hey, I just want to check with you. My clients, we've been talking about using an escalation clause. How do you feel about that? Are you okay with that? Because some agents will say, don't send that to me. Or the seller doesn't want to do that because it's not fair.
Yeah, so like, do you always go 10 grand over? Because I use
No.
the escalation clause anytime that's like multiple counter offers.
Yeah.
And like, we go like $1,000 over. Is that like so cheap? Like they're gonna
much.
piss them off?
Not going to piss them off, but it may not get you the result that you're looking for. I mean, if you're doing it, you got to do it where it means something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because like $1,000, and let's say they send this really sweet picture, and it's the sweet,
I don't think sellers care
Dawn's
about
adorable daughter, and maybe they have a dog, and this sweet letter, and they're like, well, that's nice to get $1,000 more, but we really love that picture. What's $1,000?
Quick example, I lost a bid, my clients lost a bid on a house. We actually offered $2,000 over, which I was like, maybe that'll work, right? No, we actually were the highest bidder by $2,500 when I saw that when the house closed and we didn't get the house.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
the terms too, though, maybe.
but
more
would a 5 or
discount.
10 maybe done it?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
did you have worse terms than that?
Yeah, it must be
No,
in the other
very, very
terms.
flexible terms.
Really?
Gave them everything they wanted.
And they weren't all cash either?
Nope.
Yeah. So you
We
never
were all
know.
conventional, all 20%. Nope,
Yeah.
we just lost.
Yeah.
They like them more.
Yeah. It's got to be something now. And the other thing is, again, ask if you don't get it and you feel like you really, put it all out there. You can ask again for acknowledgement that the seller did see the offer. You can get a rejection, ask for a rejection or something. So anyway, but yeah, it does happen. It absolutely does. So I will never forget one time I had clients that I think we were like 25,000 over what it closed for, and it was a bank-owned property, and I was so pissed. I really didn't think that the agent presented the offer. But what happened? So I actually called the bank.
double
This was
in?
again with all the banks. No, the buyer originally went in as all cash. And then halfway through, they changed it to financing. And they, asset managers work differently. And they're just like, they just want to get this thing closed. So to them, they took the all cash, 25,000 less because, they could be in Minnesota or wherever they are working, and it's just different markets. So anyway, it's just kind of interesting. So, stuff happens.
But when you ask the listing agent for the acknowledgement, the rejection, and you still don't get it, then what you do?
You've asked. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't,
Force them to do anything.
it's an ethical thing to do. So, let's talk about ethical too. Okay, every day there's something, okay? There's always something. I want to go back to, this kind of goes back to something, and actually it goes back to something that's sort of happening to me as well, is when you're working with a buyer, but when you're working and with a seller, it's so important to really spend time to set expectations. That's why, that list that I sent, that you guys all have, if you don't have it, let me know, the escrow timeline sheet, and you can of course tweak it or whatever. But that's setting expectations on this is what to expect. But it's your job to you know, when you meet with them, this is how I work, you know. Amy had a situation yesterday or a couple days ago that was really one that makes you sick. You have to kind of just like breathe, get over it, because it's gonna happen. You're gonna get screwed in this business. It just happens because not everybody is ethical. Not everybody cares about you. It's all about them, and it's unfortunate. But then there's some people that go in above and beyond to really be so appreciative, and those are the ones that just like, they're reminders of why we do this, because it is a pretty amazing career. But every once in a while, as Amy said, you just get knocked in the, you know, Grace! Come on in! So good to see you. Oh, you've got one. Okay, perfect. So, okay. Now, and I'm going to try to keep things going here because I can get talking and then we'll be like, oh my gosh, and we didn't cover the stuff that I was going to cover. So, but anyway,
Ethics.
oh yeah. So, okay. So, when you're sitting down with a buyer for the first time, and this doesn't mean that it will happen, you know, it's going to happen the way it's going to happen or not. But usually I'm like, let me tell you how I work. Or let's say you talk to somebody on the phone. Let's say it's a lead, you know, from Zillow or from, you know, whatever. Or you know, you meet them at an open house, or, you know, again, you're sitting down, you're saying, let me tell you, you're hearing about what they want, and then you're saying, let me tell you how I work. I work super hard for my clients. It's a relationship that goes beyond just selling you, you know, the house. It's providing you whatever you need to feel comfortable. It's being there for you afterwards, you know, with, if you need a plumber, whatever you need. It's a relationship. I'm here for the long run. That's basically what I say. I'm going to advise you the best that I can and try to make it as stress-free as a process as I can for you, because as exciting as it is, it can be stressful whether you're buying or selling. So this is what I expect from you in return, is I expect your loyalty, because I'm giving my 100%. So all I ask is that if you go into an open house, you see a property, you know, you drive by online, that you know, if you go into an open house, you tell them, hey, I'm working with Amy Swanson, coming in and, you know, blah, blah, blah. You know, you call me. If you see a sign, call me. You know, take a picture of it. I'll call the listing agent, give me the address, blah, blah, blah. So Amy has been working with clients for months now, spent time missed a plane, as she's saying to me, from a vacation to write an offer for a property or for a buyer. Didn't happen. So now they see another property, they go to see it, and the agent there, you know, made them believe, probably, which happens, that if they didn't write through them, they may not get the property. Mm-hmm. So what do? They write through them. They don't tell them that, you know, they're working with Amy, and they're opening escrow. So it's just like, seriously? So if you don't want this to happen to you, there is a buyer representation agreement, which I included in this packet. And there's actually two. There's one that's non-exclusive and there's one that's exclusive. Now, I personally have not used one of these because I'm like, hey, Carlos, are we working together? Yes. Okay, you're my kind of people. I know I'm not going to get screwed. I hope I'm not, you know? But this is really, and this, if they refuse to pay you, you know, what are you going to do? You're not going to sue them. But, so
is there a copy? You said there's a copy of the non-exclusive?
Oh, maybe not in there. I think it's just the exclusive. The non-exclusive, and you can go online and read the differences. The non-exclusive one, basically, from what I gather, it does not require the buyer to owe you money. It's just saying that you are working with me. So that's something where it's a contract saying that you're going to, it's a trust thing. The exclusive one, basically, you actually on paragraph 3, if you read through, you actually put down the percentage amount, so if it's 2.5% or, a dollar amount. So for example, there are some people, you could do this too, like if, let's say, some of those, I don't even know, I haven't seen them lately, but that Rex Realty or, whatever, okay, there's a few terrible agencies, they'll put a property on the MLS and it says they're paying you $1. That Jeannie Kane had that one. Went into escrow. She never looked at the CBB, what it said.
God.
It was $1. Here she had done, it was multiple offers. She had done everything she did, got the buyers, whatever. It was $1. So the reason you would use this form too is again, you're setting expectation in the beginning, saying that here I'm working for you. All I ask is that this is a relationship, whereas you understand that if you don't go through me, you owe me a commission, and you put that on there. Or you can say, if I'm not getting paid what is reasonable, you owe me a commission.
I have a question.
I'm so sorry, let me just finish this too, because if I don't finish the thought, I will get lost. Is, the other thing you can do is if you don't have this in place, and let's say it says $1, or it's 1%, or something ridiculous, you could say, this looks like a great property, but I have to disclose something to you. The seller is not paying my commission. They're asking the buyer to. How do you feel about that? Because basically they are.
Redfin does that, some of them. I have seen that in Pell Place.
Oh, I don't know. But it could be anybody. It could be anybody. So, I mean, it's a conversation. The public, they don't know what we do. They have no clue what they do. Some people might even think you're on a salary. You know what I mean? They don't know. So it really falls on us to let people know, or you have the mentality that I know it's playing Russian roulette. I'm going to have 10 amazing clients and I'm going to have one that just screws me every 10,
Yeah.
and it is what it is. So it's up to you how you handle it. It'll be interesting. Amy sent a letter. You didn't hear anything back yet, did you? Yeah.
The letter that I sent the letter.
Yes, exactly. You did what you can do. Now, ultimately, honestly, that agent didn't do anything wrong, as Amy said, because they did not say anything. They admitted, they didn't say that, hey, we're working with. It was their choice. They know. And I would like to think that they would buy you get you a really nice gift card to Nordstrom or something. Probably won't. It just, some people, it's ridiculous. But anyway, I did print this. Sorry, April.
It's okay, no problem. I was just curious, like, what are the enforcement, are there any, and what are they if there are any enforcement procedures? Let's say that the transaction does conclude, and let's say that the buyer was advised that if they proceed with this offer and then insulting close of escrow, the contract, that they're gonna owe a commission. Is that something that we can,
Well,
like, how is that enforceable? Because the problem I'm having, even in Maryland, is that no broker is willing to enforce it.
you have it here. Like I said, it's a deterrent. It's a deterrent. Are you gonna sue a buyer for money? It's like, it's just like taking a listing. We had an agent that had a listing, and the seller was unhappy with him, wanted to fire him. And he's like, he had, done everything that he, did to get the name out there, mega open houses, did postcards, this and that, spent money on his photos. and she was like, this isn't a good fit. And she honestly was not, she was kind of crazy. I mean, I would have just said like, good riddance. And he wanted to fight it. I'm like, why would you want to waste your energy and be in a contract with somebody that doesn't want to be in with you? Let him go. So it's kind of like you could try, but you know, if they refuse,
So what's
They
the
refuse.
purpose of a form that's actually built by par if there's no one backing us up as
well,
agents?
what it is it's gonna be that they remembered they signed this. They're gonna remember they signed this. So you can, you know, scare the bejesus out of them. If they go and they write with somebody else, it's like, let's say they go into an open house and they write, then you could, you know, notify that agent, hey, they have a buyer broker agreement with me. There's things you can do. You have a shot. You also have a shot if you have that conversation, you know, and you can say, look, if I'm not doing what I said I'm gonna do, if this relationship gets ugly at any time, let me know. Or you can say, you know, in the beginning, look, we're gonna go out one time, and it's gonna be a test, it's gonna be like having a coffee. You know, we're gonna see if we are a good match. If you like me and I like you and we feel like we are good together, and if we are, then I'm gonna have you sign a buyer broker agreement. It's the form that honestly protects me, because I'm gonna be doing a lot of work, you know, previewing for you, and a lot of things on the sidelines that you're not going to necessarily see in trying to get you or finding the right, you know, home for you. So they're gonna remember this. You know, you remember what you
I understand
signed.
your comments about deterrent, and that sounds great. I just don't understand the logic, and this is my engineer wife thought.
Yeah.
I don't understand the logic of having the California Association of Realtors create a form that is unenforceable.
Yeah.
I don't understand that logic.
Well, it is enforceable, there's mediation terms.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but who wants to go there? Who wants to go there? You can pursue it for sure, and you may win. But it's like, who really wants to spend the energy on that when you could be, you know, selling something else? So, I mean, I'm not saying you can't enforce it. I'm just saying, I don't know how easy it is. I've never heard of anybody enforcing, you know, but it's gonna be, they're gonna think before they do that. You know, go in and say, oh, we're not gonna use Amy. You know?
One of the agent in Keller Williams, Silver Spring,
Mm-hmm.
so that happens between her and the seller.
Oh,
So
uh-huh.
she won it because she had a phone, but she had all the bad reputation in that area. Everybody knows her.
Yeah.
So later on, she couldn't get any lead
Yeah.
in that day.
Yeah.
So what your point is, see the bigger picture
Exactly.
in the future, not the one
Yeah.
small commission you can, you know,
Exactly.
miss.
And especially with today, because you know what? Somebody unhappy, they could smear your name all over social media, and you just don't want that. It's, you know, there is so much that is not fair.
So we don't work in fast food restaurant.
We don't. You take the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
You know, the rewards outweigh some of these things where you just get screwed. And you just have to let it go. And you have to have somebody you can vent to. So if it happens, you can call me, and you can vent all you want, April, any of us. And I'll feel your pain, just like I felt Amy's pain. I've been there. But
I
it's,
took it on the chin. I took it on the chin 4 times in the last 9 years in Maryland.
oh.
No broker was willing to enforce it, even make a phone call.
Oh, well, we'd be mailing to make a phone call for you, but I mean, I'm just saying,
It's just ridiculous. That's something that I don't think is, I think is more than unfair, but I can let you go, sorry.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
an open-
yeah.
Sorry,
So,
question.
you know, I know, but again, it's, you know, do you wanna really go there? It's, yeah, yeah.
Win some, you lose some, right?
You do. It's unfortunate, and, you know, that's the thing is, you know, that people can just use you and, you know, spit you out and say sorry, you know. So, and unfortunately, with, you know, when you're in a very competitive market, people will do things because they get desperate, you know, and that's exactly what happens, so. And the thing, you know, but Amy, the thing to do, honestly, is say, you know, I understand you had to do what you had to do, but, you know, I hope, you owe me, you know, you could say it jokingly, You gotta send me, which Priscilla's really good at that. She'll say something serious and she'll laugh. But, you know, you owe me 2 great clients for that. And they will, you know, hopefully.
Depends.
Make them feel guilty.
Yeah, yeah,
That's all
yeah.
I can do.
So,
I just
Anyway.
go to the extreme saying about karma.
yeah, I know. I say that a lot, you know. So, okay, let's talk about, and then we have other things we can go into, but let's make sure we talk about the COP and the seller's purchase of replacement property, which is probably the one form that's always like, where is that form? I can't find it, because you would think it would say contingency for seller, but it's not. So, this is a good one to talk about, and I think it really was because Heather just had one, and I was like, we need to talk about that. And I wasn't. Sometimes you're like, I think I'm right, and then somebody says, no, it reads this way, and so I was happy when I was right. So I was like, I understand this form. You gotta read this enough.
It was a very gray area,
A little bit. It is, but it isn't
It's like
in
the
a way.
counter too.
Exactly.
That's why I got
So, but even with that, it wasn't necessarily gray because we were addressing the top part. So it was gray to somebody else that maybe didn't really understand the form. So there's 2 parts of the COP, which is contingency for, sale of buyer's property. The first part is how long is the seller obligated to play with you?
Which one you're going
Which
to
are you
now?
looking
The
at?
COP. Oh, sorry.
1A.
Yes.
Which one?
Oh, wait a minute. Contingency for sale of buyer's property.
SPRP?
Yeah, buyer property.
COP, yeah.
COP, okay.
Yeah, the
Okay,
COP,
fine.
sorry. Yeah. I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. So, okay, so if you look at the top part, basically, it's 1 through 3, but really it's 1A. How long is the seller going to, like I said, play with you, like be in alignment with you? So here it says 17 days. It's, doesn't
Where
it,
do-
oh,
where do
no,
you
it
see
doesn't say that.
17?
Oh gosh, is this the one?
Where did
Revised 117. I wonder if
2B
this is
says
the,
17. 2B says buyer has 17.
okay, yeah, I'm
Or
sorry.
a number that you put in.
Yeah.
So it's the
The
buyer's
buyer
property on
Yeah, it's
contingency,
two
not the
Yes,
seller's.
yes, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, there we go, okay. So the one, 1A is, and I'm so sorry, my eyes have been, I don't know what, so blurry, it's hard for me to read, seriously. So the top part basically is you're just naming the the property and so forth. So, yeah, so, either the buyer's property is in escrow or it's not in escrow. If it's not in escrow, then you're basically asking the seller to be in alignment with you, be under contract with you for 17 days. That's what that top part means. Or you could ask for 30 days or however many days, because there has to be an end point for how long you're going to be able to hold them under contract. Now you can, if you get to 17 days and you're close and there's no activity on the property, you can go back obviously and say, hey, we've got somebody, can we have another week or a couple days, because I think they're going to be writing, they're just getting their loan lined up or something. So you can always change that, but as a you've got a start and you've got an end point. So that's how long they're going to do the contingency, which means technically that the seller has to put it in contingent status. Okay, so in the MLS, a lot of times, if you're doing a search, you should always look, if you've got a non-contingent, you should always look active, back on market, and also contingent. A lot of times we forget, even me, I forget to do that. Because if you've got a non-contingent, you can see, where they're at and you could bump them out, So, so that's a good one to look at.
Ask a question in this. So say on the 15th day, the buyer enters escrow. How does that affect the timeline then? They had 17 days to get in escrow. Now they're in
Yes.
escrow on the 15th day. Do you start over then?
Well, no.
Okay.
Okay, so this is where we get down to the bottom part.
Alright.
Okay, and this form, in my opinion, does not go into enough detail. So this is where you have to really address it in an addendum or in the purchase agreement or counteroffer or something. So it's really labeled, itemized, so everybody knows exactly what's going on, so there's no gray areas. So they're saying you have 17 days to get into escrow on the top part. The bottom part addresses seller's right to cancel, okay? Which basically, if you go to 4, if buyer's property is in or enters into escrow, okay, sorry,
Number
4. Cancellation of buyer's property. So basically, if buyer's property is in or enters into escrow and either party to that escrow gives notice to the other to cancel that contract, buyer within 2 days thereafter shall give written notice of that cancellation. So that's basically that's 48 hours to do so. If and that relates to the down paragraph 8, okay, which is the right to remove contingencies or cancel. So the cancellation on top would be for if they're not in escrow, okay, or if there is not a delayed right. You have to, again, this is confusing, but if you kind of understand the way it works, it actually is not. So let's go to, and we'll open it up for discussion. We'll just open this. Okay, so you've got buyer's right to cancel and you've got seller's right to cancel. So up until basically the buyer removes contingencies, they can cancel, right? The seller can cancel by giving a notice to perform if buyer has not, once they get to that day 17, right? Or they can actually give it 2 days prior. So if the buyer's property is not in escrow, by day 15, then they can issue a notice to perform. Hey, you're not in escrow. We don't want to do this anymore. We want our property back on active because we feel like it's not getting the exposure we want. So if you're not in escrow by day 17, we're canceling. Okay? So that's what they're saying. Okay? Now, if the buyer's property is in escrow, you want to make sure that you've protected your buyer. Meaning, you want no way that the seller can issue you a notice to perform if they get a better offer, or if, you don't remove your contingency for sale on that 17 day. Okay? So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
We want to address that. So what you're going to do is look at, again, 8A and 8B. 8A is immediate right to notify buyer to remove sale of property contingency. So, seller shall have the right to immediately give written notice to buyer in writing, remove this contingency, remove loan contingency, and any other, and provide verification of sufficient flows to close. And then if buyer fails to complete these actions within 3 days, of such notice, then seller may immediately cancel this agreement in writing. If I'm representing a seller, I'm gonna make sure that this immediate right is in place, if the buyer's property is not in escrow. And the reason being.
Then you don't have to wait the 17 days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, the top part gives you 17 days or whatever you guys decide, 30 days to get the property. Play with the seller where it's contingent and allowing you to be under contract and to do everything they need to do to hopefully be in escrow and put this together, okay? But again, during that time period, if they don't go into escrow, you as a seller then, the seller has the right to give a 3-day notice. Basically, it used to be called 72-hour clause, it's just now 3 days, or whatever the time period you want to remove the contingency, or they can go with another buyer.
That's
Okay?
if they're not in escrow.
Well, yes and no. If this is where, again, you need to address this on your offer or an addendum, and this is what I do, is if I'm going to be using this form, then I'm going to say, well.
Are you
let me-
representing the buyer or the seller?
Okay, let's say I'm representing the buyer. Okay, so if I'm representing the buyer, I'm gonna do what Heather's situation was, where the agent asked for the moon.
Yeah.
They came
I was
in
representing the seller.
Yeah.
But the buyer asked for
delayed.
Yeah.
fee.
They had 8B checked
Mhm.
and they had 7A checked, which
Yes.
I don't want either one of those. I
Yeah.
want those both eliminated.
So it wasn't yet listed, but you could still, let's talk about that. Okay, so let's say, in this case, they hadn't yet even listed their property, which happens all the time, like, oh my God, I see this property. They hadn't, so then it's up to you as a seller, as representing the seller, buyer's property must be in the MLS within 72 hours or seller can cancel. So you may be saying a yes to the 17 days, but you're putting a time limit. If they do not get into the MLS, we don't want to, we're not wasting 17 days. You have to be in by a certain date. So that should be addressed. So if you're representing the seller, how many days are you going to give them to get in the MLS?
Where do you put that?
You would counter it.
Counter.
You gotta think this is where you have to think all different scenarios. Take your time.
But I didn't do that, and I just gave them a 3-day notice the day after I got their contingent offer, because I got another offer.
You got another offer.
The next day.
Exactly,
And I was
exactly.
hoping they would cancel, but they're still moving forward.
Okay, but it all, so it just depends. If the agent says, look, we're gonna be in the MLS, I've got photos lined up for tomorrow, you can trust it. I mean, I'm just saying it's an option you could do. But anyway, so in that case, they were not on the in the MLS, or even if they were in the MLS, but they weren't in escrow, they're asking for delayed right. Delayed right means is that the seller does not have the option to give a 3-day notice. They have to wait the whole amount of time.
And your timelines don't start until their property goes into escrow.
Yes, if that's checked, and that's what
Yeah.
he had checked.
Yeah.
So that's
Which
just
could
no
be
good.
6 months, who knows?
Exactly. So, you at 17 days, you could give them the notice, and then the whole
Okay.
thing's done, and you go back on the offer. Back on the market
Even
as
though they
active.
have that timeline checked, that it's dependent on them.
Yes, because
Okay.
you've got
So
'cause-
that takes that out.
exactly.
I-
So they address two different things. So.
It's confusing.
Well, it is, but it isn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, one, it has to do how long is the seller going to play with, allow this contingency in place so that it's contingent in the MLS. And the other one is how is it going to be once you're in? So this is super important. Let's say, now let's say I'm going back on the seller side and I'm saying, okay, we're going to take your contingent offer, but we're going to say 8A to apply. 8A is basically the 3-day notice, right? Okay, I get it. I was shooting for the moon, trying to get this delayed, but, you know, for the whole 17 days, but I get it. I'll go with that. So, but what I'm gonna do, so let's say I'm representing the buyer and I'm talking to you, I'm saying, April, we have to go with this, so you have to know, we're gonna put your house on the market, we're gonna take all the photos, but there's a chance they could get another offer and bump us out, you know? So, you would be then telling the, your buyer, you also have to decide, is it, you're going to be contingent on removing contingencies on your replacement property, right? Or are you in a position where like, you're just selling, you're gonna take your money and you're gonna go into rental, you know, so that you can be in a position to move ahead. And that's the conversation you wanna have ahead, because sometimes somebody will like, if I can get my price, I'll find a place to live, I wanna be in a better position to buy. So again, you have to, but you don't wanna have them where they're homeless. You know, they lost out on this one and then, oh my gosh, you've sold their property. That would be not good. So you wanna have that, you know, have that conversation. And if there's, this is a trick that I do too, if there's something really important that a seller or a buyer says they want to address, put it in your counter, just like it's there. So like, dining room fixture does not convey. Seller, this sale is contingent on seller removing contingencies on replacement property, or seller closing on replacement property. You have an option there too. So that way, it's like, it's in there because you're talking about it, it's fresh. It's not 30 days from now where you might forget, because you know how our memories are sometimes. Just put it in there and it's a reminder, and then you can put in all your other things. So I do that often. So anyway, but going back to now, we're representing the buyer. So what I want to do is I want to make sure once we get into escrow and we say, here, it's day 10, we are now in escrow. Our timelines are going to start the day after today because I'm giving you notification. Well, what do I want to happen now? I want to make sure this delayed right goes into effect. Super important. That way, while your client is doing their home inspection, they're paying for appraisal, you're moving forward, and they're moving forward on their end with their buyer, that there's no way that somebody can bump them out. So you're going to say in your offer or in an addendum to the COP that delayed right is to be in effect once buyer's property goes into escrow, and to remain in, and it remains in until, and you would say during the term of this agreement. So that means they cannot get bumped out. Now, this is also something, again, you have to have the conversation with your buyer. Mr. Buyer, you are contingent on the sale of your home to purchase this property, but the seller is going to expect you to remove all contingencies, including this COP, after the due diligence period. Basically, after the buyer on your property removes their contingencies. That can be really scary for a buyer. Because why? Because they're deposits. So you want to try to get away with the smallest deposit you can, or match the deposits up. So if you've got, let's say, a $10,000 deposit that you can get away with, let's say for a detached home, and then you've got their condo, you ask for like the maximum, obviously 3%. So you try to match up. There's a risk for doing it this way, and this is your risk, but it is the only way. Now, we might get lucky, and the seller and the agent are like, okay, you removed all contingencies except the COP, and your buyers remove contingencies, we feel cool with it. But you may get a Bulldog listing agent that said, oh no, you're to remove all contingencies including. If your buyer says there's no way I'm gonna do that, then you need to address in the offer somewhere, COP to, remain in effect through, the, term, buyer to remove all contingencies except COP to remain in effect during the term.
But when I gave them my 3-day notice, they released the COP contingencies the first day that I sent it to them, like the day after.
Well, then they were probably able to, and remember we talked about this, so they were able to purchase without the sale. So then what you need to do as a,
No, they were not though. They said they got multiple offers. He listed his property like 20 grand under market so he could sell it, but they released the COP.
well,
So-
that's their thing. So but he has to remove all contingencies on whatever the day is on your property, and if their buyer falls out, then they can't perform, then they may lose their deposit. Yeah. And very few people will be willing to do that. But every situation is different, and it depends who you're representing. So, in that case, that's a beautiful thing for your client. But you want to make sure, again, this is why you want to make sure deposits are enough. Like, if you are accepting a $5,000 deposit, I mean, that will hurt to lose $5,000, but, people might, I lost $5,000. Now, if it's on a $300,000 condo, that's going to hurt. But if it's on a, $1 million property, even 10,000, they may, whatever. So try to get 3% always on your, your deposits, because it's there for a reason. Once they remove contingencies, it's gotta hurt. You don't want it where, sometimes you see $2,000 or even, like I said, 5,000. To me, that's just like, it's not really protecting your seller. So ask for as much, again, 3% is max. So anyway, does that make sense on the immediate right? And so that's where you have to address it. If you can get away with the delayed right, if you're representing the buyer from the get-go, and I've had that where I've had listing agents on the other side say, yes, we'll do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how lucky did we get? Everything I asked for, they did, which happened to me, Heather, where we were not on the market yet. I asked for delayed right, and they were like, cool, yeah. But again,
Maybe the agent didn't know.
right, and we didn't get the property sold. So on day 17, they canceled. They really wanted to work with us, but they had somebody else. So all you can do then, if you agree to do that, is you can take backup offers, and that backup offer you hope is still there in day 17, 17 days.
Do you feel like a 17-day delay really impacts the selling of the home in the long run? Like, how much is that a setback for the seller?
Well, if the property, and it's a good question, the property's only been on the market for a week, they may say, look, we really would love to work with you, but we would feel better if you were in escrow. So come back to us. If we're still on the market, we will work with you. Or, get your house, in the MLS, and then we'll accept. Like, if you think it's gonna take, you don't even have photos scheduled or whatever, so that you're not wasting a week or, even 3 days or something. It just depends on the situation. But if a property has been on the market even, let's say, 2 weeks, and it's like very slow, then, and you think that you have to really look at where their property is. Is it a fast-moving property? It's a good idea to say, what are you gonna list it at? Look at comps, And, you know, is it on a road? Is it, are there power lines? Is there anything negative that's gonna affect the property? And so all of those things, you can sit down with your seller and say, well, this is what I'm being told. Based on what I'm seeing, it should sell quickly. So, you know, we'll do it. So it just depends. But now is a really good time to do it because the market is still moving, but it's not crazy like it normally is like in the spring. So you actually, there's more sellers that may say, yes, I'll take a contingent offer. So it's good if you've got, you know, people doing that. So anyway, does this make sense? So it's two separate, just, you know, when you're using this form, and of course you can always call any of us, but you've got the top part that addresses how long the seller is going to basically be in contract with you as a contingent offer. And then the second part is the, is basically the right to cancel and time periods as well. So this is the other thing about the time periods. So obviously it says here that it shall start as specified in the agreement, which basically reverts back to the RPA, the purchase agreement, which starts the day after acceptance, or if the box is checked, the day after buyer gives evidence that they're in escrow. So of course, if you're representing a buyer, you would rather that box to apply because then your client isn't spending money on the appraisal or the inspection. But, and again, so it just depends where the seller's at, if they're gonna allow you or not. But again, the buyer has to realize this may be their only option if they love the house. It's a cost for being contingent. You know, it's not ideal, but they're willing to work with you, but they want you to start your, you know, and maybe you can compromise. You can say, okay, we'll do the home inspection, but we'll order the appraisal within 3 days after, you know, we're in escrow. So they're not losing, you know, on both. Okay. So let's go to seller purchase of replacement property. Anybody use this form lately? Okay. This is, so you've got obviously a seller, which you see all the time, you know, contingent on replacement property. So again, it's giving, the 1A is saying how long, if you're, say you in the confidential marks, you're gonna say, subject to seller finding replacement property. If they know, you know, if they're really like motivated and there's plenty of properties or they've identified one, then write it in there, seller has identified a home. And the reason to do that is that some buyers, if they're in a hurry, they might say, we're not gonna mess with them because we need to find something. So if they seem very eager and there's a couple different options and say, seller's identified. So again, it's giving, we get an offer, we're gonna include the SPRP and make sure you include it in the counter, that it's part of the counter offer from, you know, your initial purchase, unless the buyer's agent already, you know, puts it in there, which they might, you know, if they know this. So anyway, the buyer's giving them 17 days, which is standard, or whatever you decide. You know, they may love the property and say, we'll give you 60 days. We're not in a rush. We just want your home. So it's whatever you guys decide. Or B, seller has entered into contract to acquire property. And the reason, again, this would be checked is, let's say they have still going through inspections, due diligence, so they don't want to sell their home without removing all contingencies and being good on their end. So that's why that would be important. C, close of replacement property. That's one where it's interesting too. They're really paranoid. We are not moving unless we close. And I actually checked that one time and it was accepted, which I couldn't believe, because can you imagine if for some reason the buyer of their property, or the seller canceled or something crazy canceled, you know, on their end, then they could on the day of closing or, you know, the day before say, sorry, we have to cancel on you. So that's a really tough one, but, there it is, so you can check if you need to. Time periods. Time periods, this is an interesting one, and I'll tell you what I've done, and not all sellers will agree to it, but I think it's fair. Time periods in the agreement for inspections, contingencies, and blah, 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 shall begin day after seller delivers buyer written notice that they're, you know, they're removing this contingency, right? Or will remain as specified in agreement. So you're asking the buyers to do their inspection, their appraisal, all the things that they need to know while this is still in effect. So meaning that they incur all this cost and you might cancel on them. So it's really not fair. It's the seller having their cake and eating it too. So when I'm talking to a seller, I'm saying, look, you know, this is a great buyer. They're giving you time to find replacement property. This is where you could be nice with them, is basically because you want them to start their contingency, doing their due diligence so that you know they're good on their end. If you cancel on them, why don't you say you'll reimburse for X amount of dollars should you cancel? Doesn't have to be the whole amount, but it could be, you know, up to, and this is where it's good to say, give $1, or put a cap, you know, up to $700 or something. So you've got, you know, at least $500 on inspection and probably $500 on, you know, appraisal, could be more, who knows. So anyway, it's good to address that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Buyer's deposit shall be delivered to escrow within 3 days after seller delivers buyer written notice of finding replacement property. Again, a lot of times we'll check the box as specified in agreement, which means in the purchase agreement. So if you want all of these things to start immediately, so that, you know, again, the seller can feel good, then you would, you know, you would do that. Close of escrow. This is a really good one as well. Buyer and seller agree that seller may extend the close of escrow for the sale of seller's property for a maximum of X days. So if somebody, let's say the buyer and their property gets delayed, right? You want to, you don't want there to be pressure. You want it in writing that the buyer is saying, okay, we'll give you X amount of days to close on your property. And, you know, like you could do a week, you could do 2 weeks or whatever. Better to have it in writing up front than have to ask for an extension later on and then you're screwed. So,
What would you put, 14 days?
yeah. Have you guys been doing what I told you to do in the RPA?
Regarding what?
The close of escrow? What happened, April?
There's spiders falling on my head. There's 2 of them. They're little itty bitty, and I'm terrified of spiders. Sorry.
Oh
for
my
the,
gosh, well come up, you wanna come up here?
That is insane.
Come up here, come up here. Oh, I would be scared too.
Sorry about that.
Do you wanna sit over here?
No, I'm gonna take these spiders on.
Okay,
I don't have
okay.
time for them.
Yeah, okay. All right, so you know what I'm talking about on the RPA?
Do the 6 days.
The 6 days, yes. Who was watching my video?
Oh, yeah.
That is to protect you. Okay, I forget what page it's on. Does anybody know what page? Do you have the RPA? Pull up the
have it
RPA.
right
It's, look at close of escrow.
Yeah. The first page?
No. It's the paragraph on,
Yeah, it's like in the middle.
it's sort of in the middle.
18.
It's
Eight.
paragraph
Page
3, I
eight.
think.
I don't know.
No, it's paragraph 3, isn't it? Close of escrow is paragraph 3? Isn't it paragraph 3?
I was working out by the content, but there's nothing about my head. Just saying that again.
Joint escrow instruction.
Like,
Close of escrow.
G.
Yeah.
Number.
Okay, yeah.
14
Heather, will
G.
you read this, Heather, read that paragraph.
Okay, close of escrow. Before buyer or seller may cancel this agreement for failure of the other party to close escrow, to this agreement, buyer or seller must first deliver to the other party a demand to close escrow. The DCE shall be signed by the applicable buyer or seller. Give the other party at least 3 days after delivery to close escrow.
So what this means is, it's really, of course, it's rare to have to give demand to close to a seller, okay? But let's say, this is where it's really important. Let's say there's multiple offers on the property, or sellers having seller's remorse. They don't wanna close, you know? They're looking for any reason to get out of this contract. There's very few reasons. It's the only reason that a seller can cancel if the buyer is not performing, right? Or they risk it being sued. So, what that paragraph is, it says 3 days. Well, the notice to perform, or the demand to close, can only be given, it can be given 3 days prior. So if they have another offer, let's say it's, you know, 20,000 or 50,000 above where your client's at, they can give a demand to close 3 days prior, and if you don't close on that day, you're out. What happens if, which happened here to Susan not long ago, luckily her clients found another house, but this exact situation happened. The loan docs were up in escrow. The buyer was ready to close, but they needed 1 extra day because they got loan docs, so they had to fund that day, get their money in, and close the next day. 1 day late, seller canceled.
Oh. Oh.
Seller canceled.
With no penalty because of that clause.
So if you change this little paragraph to 6 days or whatever you want, then Hunter's like, what? Yeah, this stuff happens. I don't make it up. And you know, how many transactions has she done? I mean, have we all done? You know, this business is all about like, oh my gosh, I've done X amount of transactions. That's never happened to me before. Holy crap.
But don't you want to keep it 3 days if you're representing your seller?
Well, yeah, but I'll tell you something. A lot of sellers won't even know that, sellers agents don't even look at that paragraph because they don't even know what it means. I'm telling you. Actually one agent did, she's been in business forever. She caught it and I had to tell her what it was there for. She's like, well, you schooled me. That's a good one.
So you do that for all your buyers? You write
Yes,
6 days in there?
it's just in there. It's standard.
I've never
And
done
what does that mean? That means they can give you the 3 days, prior, the demand to close, but it gives you an additional 3 days after because stuff happens and you can't close on time.
14G.
So you
that.
can,
And escrow.
yeah, you can, and you could say 10 days, give them an extra, 7 days to close, whatever you want. Some people might, catch it and say, oh, no, or, whatever, but in doing that, at least in that 1 out of 1,000 or, one out, bless you, out of 100, you can sleep at night. Oh my gosh, they can't do that. We're gonna be late and there's nothing they can do. I mean, most sellers are gonna be like, no problem, but they can't do anything if that's signed.
for 6 days anyway.
Amy.
Huh?
Somebody counted me, I put that in 6 days and they took it out.
Well, you can try.
Yeah.
You can try. You know, well, and then counter, well, we want 5. You know, it just means that you're giving us 2 days in case something happens. They may not even realize what it is. You know what I'm saying? So explain it. But, you know, and sometimes you try the best that you can. It doesn't mean that they're going to always say yes. But it's, you know, it's important for you to know because, you know, it may save a deal or, you know, or just let you sleep at night.
I
So,
just have a question. I'm just like, I guess I'm so confused about everything that just happened.
yeah.
So I just don't understand why this buyer would be contingent his offer, because I mean, that's not desirable for, obviously, for the seller. So why don't they make their home that they're gonna sell contingent on finding a suitable replacement property? Or you have to do both ends to protect yourself?
Well, because some people, for example, I have a seller right now, he wants to buy a larger home, and we talked about it. I said, do you want to be contingent on you selling? He's like, no. He says, I want to buy a bigger home. So if I get the right buyer, I'll sell either way. And I'm sure that's, you know, that way, you know, they'll go into short-term housing, they'll go into an Airbnb or whatever, so that they're in a position to close. So everybody's different, or you know, maybe their relative, yeah, they could do a rent back.
Yeah.
They could have a relative. They'll move in with a relative for a couple months. I mean, you're in a much better position to be non-contingent.
Yeah, so if you're representing, let's say you have a buyer that's gonna sell and buy, so do you do both of these forms then? That's,
It gets confusing.
Yeah, well, if you, yes, you would. If it's a double whammy, yeah. So if you're putting their house on the market, but you're only gonna sell it if you get this property, then you would. Or if, you know, or any property, that's the only contingency you'd have. Yeah.
So you'll be using both forms, really,
Yeah.
both the
Yeah.
CUP and this, it gets hairy now.
It's just protecting your client. That's why, like, don't rush to think of all the different scenarios. Like, also, when you're doing something like this and they're doing a double, let's say your buyer, you got to think about the closing too. Okay, so they need to sell in order to buy. First of all, it may not be possible to close concurrently, meaning together, okay? So your client's home is gonna close, let's say on Friday, okay? And look at that calendar when you're doing close of escrow too. Because if it's not possible, and that really the best way to make it happen is to make sure you have escrow and title is the same. If you don't have them as the same, it's gonna be really difficult. If you don't have title the same, it's like impossible. And even with escrow, they have to really be, you know, well meshed together because they're, you know, so it's really, if you're gonna do it, you wanna have both title and escrow as the same to close on the same day. And that's not even a guarantee, but at least you have, you know, a good opportunity to make that happen.
how do you convince the seller to let you use the escrow company you're using as a buyer?
Well, because if you explain it, sometimes the other agent will get it, and they might. And if they don't, then what you need to do is say, okay, so chances are, we're gonna close on Friday on your home, but your new home is not gonna close until Monday. So, what do we have to do? I'm looking at Heather. I mean,
What do you mean?
what do we have to do? Okay, so, all right, we're not sure if we're gonna be able to close concurrent on Friday. Well, first of all, you may wanna look at the calendar and make sure you're not closing on Friday, cause then you gotta wait the whole weekend, okay? It's very important. Sometimes, you know, how everybody does 30 days or 45 days. If you're doing something like this, look on the calendar and do it like, have it close on a Monday or Tuesday. So you've got, in case there is a delay, it's, you know, So you're gonna look at the calendar, you're gonna say, okay, well, we're gonna have this be on a Tuesday, you're gonna close. So then what you're gonna do for, if I'm here and I'm looking at you and I'm excited because I've found my house, what do we need to do, and I sold my house, so we're countering, what do you need to do for me?
Make sure the timelines match up, or what do you?
Well, okay, but so we're gonna close on a Tuesday on my house. We don't know if we're gonna close.
To have that 6th day, is that what you're saying?
No. Okay, we have to think about, them. If they close on a Tuesday and we don't close concurrent, they're gonna have to be out of their home unless we do an SIP, giving them extra days for occupancy. So it's super important you're addressing the occupancy thing. I sometimes will say, do a week, but not even do a week after the close. This is the other thing too. Think about this, okay? This is a scenario that you may not even think about, but it can happen. So let's say you're being really thoughtful and you're saying, hey, we're gonna give you 3 days. So we're gonna close on a Tuesday, hopefully, but maybe it's not gonna happen concurrent, it's gonna close the next day on a Wednesday. So I'm asking for occupancy to be 3 days after we close. What happens if they close on time and you're the one that's late on your replacement property? So your replacement property, oh my gosh, things go haywire and you're a week late. That means your client is gonna have to move out on day 3 because that's what you did, and unless the buyer is willing to extend, but they may have moving trucks and everything all, sorry, we have to have occupancy 3 days. That means your client is gonna have to pay for stuff to sit in storage, you're gonna have to go to a hotel, it's gonna be so stressful. So really what you wanna do is say occupancy to be 3 days after seller's replacement property closes. Right?
Do you?
Do you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you've protected your seller, and you won't have, it'll be stressful on the buyer, but who are you representing? The seller in this case.
Amy, can you repeat that please?
And that's
Yes.
good because it tells the buyer up front what to expect.
Right, exactly.
To not have those moving trucks be there and plan to be there on that one day.
Well,
Put that in
not
the
only do we
agenda.
So
buy it, just
basically,
tell them.
what you would do
It
is
sells
you
for
would
them.
say that the occupancy to be 3 days or 2 days, whatever the seller needs, after seller's property seller's replacement property closes. So that way, again, they're protected, they're not moving out, and, it's unfortunate for the buyer, but the seller's not moving twice.
So are you putting this in an addendum or an encounter, or?
Yeah, where, chances are it's gonna be in a counter, because they're not gonna be putting that, you're gonna be doing a counter offer, when you get your offer. Even if the buyer's agent uses the seller purchase replacement property, addendum, there's always something to counter, You want to try to tighten up, obviously, timelines on that end, because again, you wanna make a call to the lender. How quickly, realistically, can you remove contingencies? So you really need to take your time, you need to, work hard for your money. So.
Do you advise your clients like one way or another if they're contingent to list their house and then start looking? Or like as soon as they get an escrow,
What's the
or
best way you-
or just, yeah.
So, this is a good question. Do you advise your client to start when do you advise them to start looking? Well, this is the thing. Like yesterday I was out with some clients and they're contingent on selling. But you know, you have to sometimes get an idea, like they're trying to figure out where they want to be. I'm trying to figure out, okay, really, you know, they're saying one thing, but now we're like, after going out yesterday, I now am very clear on what you want and what you don't want. So it's good to kind of look, but not get too serious. Has anybody heard of a bridge loan? Okay, so you can also tell them, you know, you might want to check out or talk to a couple lenders about bridge loans, which would enable you to purchase non-contingent. It does, and this is the conversation I had yesterday, there is of course a cost to it, but it can give peace of mind, so it's worth, you know, checking out. If you're working with first-time home buyers, you know, the lenders do their thing, and you know, obviously we want to really give them a few different lenders. It's really better, okay, than just one. But even so, you know, giving them the escrow timeline and then reminding them this is what's going to happen. But also having the conversation too, keep in mind, you know, really understand what you're going to need from the lender as far as, you know, closing costs. Like, you know, ask if there's fees. You know, it's really not that we should, but I just feel like sometimes there's some lenders that are really good taking the time and explaining, and then, you know, there's some that are not, and then there's a surprise. So it's like, for example, we can say, oh, it's, go look in the RPA. You know, I have to remind, like Allison, she'll say something, she may say something to, you know, a client or whatever, and I'm like, they don't know what RPA is. We know what RPA is. And it's the same thing with lenders. They assume, oh, they should know this, this, and this. So you need to, you know, if they don't understand something, to ask or remember that they don't speak our language, so you need to spell it out.
So when you do that 3-day to protect the seller, that occupancy, you don't ask for, the buyer doesn't expect to be paid for that?
I mean, sometimes they will, but I always
just
ask
say
for free.
Also, what's the liability there? I mean, I know people do this all the time, but who, if something happens, so who owns so the buyer owns the property in those 3 days, what if the seller trashes it? I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, this is the thing. So again, look at your seller. If this house is just horrible, if it's super dirty, it comes back to setting expectations. If it's really dirty, then, you know, say to your clients, look, you know, you see how it is? Don't expect it to be like spick and span, you know, or maybe say, you know what, I'm noticing how they keep their house. As a gift to you, I'm going to pay for it to be clean, because, you know what I mean? Like, that's something that you could do. If it is really well maintained, everybody's been, you know, if it looks really good, I mean, then there's always a risk. But I've done so well. I've done, I don't know how many. I mean, again, like, I'm probably due for something weird to happen on that, but I've never had something. You know, I mean, it's like you have to see the scenario. If they seem like, okay, these are, you know, whatever, the agent is on par. It's not like some flaky person. If it's all like you know, weird, then advise your client. You know, there's a risk for they want this, but it's a risk to allow them to do this. Are you willing, how badly do you want the house? They will only sell it to you with this, but I don't really trust them.
Sometimes you don't know until you enter the transaction, though, what you're really into, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but you can go in your gut. It's like, you know, if I meet you, Elizabeth, I know you're a person of, I believe you're a person of character. Like, you know, there's a good relationship, you know? Even the best of us get fooled, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, you just go with your gut, you know? And if your gut is that this agent is just flaky and whatever, and the house is a mess, you know? I don't know about doing that. They're wanting this, but, you know. But, I mean, it's done all the time. So, and then the SIP is used for what? 29 days or less. If it's 30 days, then it's the real estate, the residential lease after sale. So okay?
I had it where, my condo, there was the buyer's agent had put in that she wanted it professionally clean,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't look at it.
Oh,
So when we closed, it was vacant, I thought it was clean, but then she said it had to be professionally
Ah,
clean,
yeah.
she had asked for it, I was like, whoa.
well, so that one I look at. Yeah, a lot,
I
because if it
missed it.
says professionally clean, that's vague, what does that mean? So chances are, you know, she'd lose, you know, like a buyer would lose because it is clean, they thought it was clean, you know? But, I always usually say, you know, on that one, like with carpets or, you know, home, I would say, seller to leave the property in clean condition, or, you know, will clean the property. So that way they can clean it any way they want. They can, you know, call Molly maids, or they can clean it themselves. So, yeah. Or when they say, yeah, it has to be, sometimes you see, the other thing too is if you're writing an offer and you're saying has to be professionally cleaned or carpets to be cleaned, when I get an offer like that, I'm like, what is it gonna be like to work with these people? You know, you have to think about these things when you're presenting an offer. You know, when I'm presenting an offer and you're trying to come in lower, are you gonna give comps to the seller and say, look, you are so out of line? Or are you gonna say, my clients love your house so much, but, you know, their budget is this, and so they didn't want to insult you, but they're hoping. Are you more apt to want to work with them that way than, you know, saying your house is, you know, so you got to think of these things. I also, one of the things too, just in case you get multiple offers, this form is really helpful. And you can make copies of it. But, you know, when you get a bunch of different offers, it is really hard to keep them straight. This really makes it so much easier.
That's awesome.
So this way you can just, okay, you can put the name there and you can put all the terms, and then makes it very easy to have on there. What else was I gonna say? And then, you know, like termite, if you've got a condo, I never write termite in the contract if it's a condo, because, you know, they do things, if it's covered, they may not do clearance or do treatment while you're in escrow. So do it as a, you know, a request for repair rather than in the RPA, and then that way the lender's not asking for clearance or asking to see a report or anything.
Yeah, because I just got an offer with a VA loan, and I know that's a big red flag too.
That's
So it's better.
different.
So do you counter it out then?
Okay, so VA is very different. VA has certain requirements, so I think VA, they have to have termite clearance.
Okay.
So, number one, you need to make sure, you talk to the lender, is it a VA, an FHA, which actually you should do when you get, if you're doing a condo, you should, call the association, the property management, or check with the lender, are they VA and FHA approved? Because they have to be approved on a list. So if they're not on the list, then, you know, when you're entering your listing, then you wouldn't put VA or FHA. And you can ask a lender will tell you. If they can apply to be too. Sometimes, you know, and the lender can help do that. So, but VA, if you're representing a seller or a buyer, and you know, let's say you're representing a buyer and you know you have VA or FHA, you need to be looking at that property. Like, is there torn carpet? Do the toilets look like they're from 70s and, you know, they're not the low flow? Then I would probably say to my client, you know, this might not go. So, or if you're representing a seller and you see it's VA, they might ask them, you know, as a requirement to close, if those boxes are checked, you might be replacing toilets. You might be replacing, you know, whatever. Or they may say that, they see a lot of wood rot needs to be replaced, or carpet, they're very picky. FHA is not as much as VA, but it's still, so you have to be careful, you know.
How long does it usually take VA?
Some can do it really, you know, some lenders can close, no, some lenders can close in like, you know, if they've got all their paperwork, it could be 20 days. Yeah, yeah. So it's just you have to know, it's more about property condition.
So I'm ex-military, and I know one of the things you can ask as a seller's agent, is to ask the buyer's lender when you have that talk, to see if they've already had verification of their eligibility letter. Because if not, that's what actually takes, to my understanding, that's what can take an extra month for sure, especially if they were in some quasi, not just like full-time army, if they were like full-time AGR or something like
Yeah.
that, their eligibility letter is gonna be crazy hard to get.
Yeah, yeah. So really, you want
That's a
to,
good
yeah,
question, is just to say, do you
Right.
have verification of their VA eligibility letter?
yeah,
Do you already
yeah.
have that?
Yeah.
Or is that something you still have to obtain?
Right, and again, like if you're working with a buyer, again, you want them to be getting all their paperwork ahead of time into a lender, whether they're VA, FHA, or conventional. But in that case, even more so, make sure everything, they have everything so that when they do find the right property, they're good to go. So it's good for you to be involved also, maybe speak to their lender and say, what is realistic? And they'll tell you, oh, we've got all of everything and we're good to go. Any other questions?
These classes are really good.
Good. Oh, we're only at 30 minutes up.
Thank you.
I wasn't sure. Yay, yay, but we did it, we did it. And then this other one is just good little tidbits, so.
Jamie, is there